Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 137 of the Citrix session. I'm your host, Andy Whiteside. Got a good group with us again, as usual, bigger than normal, but that's a good thing. Bill, how's it going?
I was wondering if there was more coming after that. Yeah, it's going great, Andy.
Well, there was more coming after that, but I decided it wasn't appropriate yet for this conversation.
Okay. Well, you got me wondering now, so we'll see.
You got me wondering now.
I think Geremy, you're probably going to bring it up. So Geremy Meyers, local partner technical specialist director. Did I say that right? Local in terms of living in what they called XenTegraville or XenTegra town a minute ago.
Well, did you just coin that, by the way? Do I get to call it XenTegraville now?
XenTegraville? Whatever. XenTegriville. But Geremy, you were just highlighting something. You got an email internally about all the DaaS enhancements coming out. I know you can't go into details here, so that stuff's not appropriate to talk about. But what do you mean, Citrix DaaS?
So we talk about this all the time. We've talked about it for years, but obviously we do a quarterly release for CVAD on-prem, which is great. But in the cloud, we have these releases that happen. I want to say 2 weeks apart. I'm not entirely sure. I'm not on the cloud ops team, but they happen enough to where I get an internal email that will tell me some of the things that are coming down the pipe, and or not just coming down the pipe, but things that have released. Sometimes they're releasing features, sometimes they're tech preview features. But I just made the comment that the list that I just saw was long this morning. So I don't know which pieces I can talk about, so I'm not. So how's that for a teaser? But
let's talk about the concept. So because it's cloud, because it's a platform as a service offering that makes up DaaS and other things, it really lives in a world of iterative development. And what you just said is it's every 2 weeks.
I think it's every 2 weeks, but yeah, those release schedules are clearly more frequent than once a quarter. Correct.
And that's the whole promise of this. It's always up to date. Companies like XenTegra doesn't have to charge you 2 weeks of services to update it. You're not chasing issues per se. They're being discovered in a holistic approach through lots of customers.
Well, you know what? This is probably a little embarrassing to say, but I'll say it anyways. So my team has we have a DaaS tenant that we use for customer demos, internal training, whatever, right? But it's not unusual for me to log in and go, "Oh, that was just released. That's neat." Yeah. So back in the day, I used to follow these quarterly releases. I would get a PowerPoint that had all the features that are coming in this new release. And now I find that I log into my DaaS tenant and there's just been a new feature released, which is it's pretty awesome, actually.
And ideally, it's like, oh, I needed that. I didn't know I needed it, but there it is. Boom.
Well, so here's what's interesting, too, is there are features that are in some of these are actually in the article we're going to cover today or continue to cover. But some of these features are like new whoop-de-doos, like, oh, my gosh, we finally support this cloud or this whatever. And in some cases, it's just making the product more supportable as well. So, they get feedback. Some of these support tickets that get opened are less around functionality and more about, we probably have less support tickets if customers knew that this was here. So we're going to put the button here, which is just as important, right?
So in addition to Geremy, we have Todd Smith. Todd, how's it going?
It's going really well. And I like to use my last name because you introduced Bill this time as Bill, which I think Bill has achieved the status that he's got that one name word or one word name like Cher, Beyonce, Bono.
Bill.
You Bill. Just led with. I'd like to point out you led with Cher. So
yeah, I wasn't sure what that was supposed to mean, so I'll just leave it alone.
Mr. Bill and I just got off a weekly team call, so I don't think to say his name, but I'll make sure I do it going forward. Todd,
been a while.
It's been a while. I assume you're enjoying your Canadian summers when you get up.
It is. So last week I had the opportunity to celebrate 2 holidays in 1 week. So we had Canada Day on Monday, and then 4th of July or Independence Day on Tuesday. So I wasn't sure which day to work. So I ended up working
neither.
both.
Yeah, I was going to say neither.
Todd, you had one chance. You had one opportunity, and you blew them both.
Yeah, I had one shot.
So just for the record, your answer was you worked both.
Yes.
Good. That's the type of leadership we need.
Yeah.
Well, we also have with us the guest star, the blogger for the blog that we're covering today, and that's Monica Griesmer. Just to remind our listeners, this is we're covering what's new in Citrix CVAD, so Citrix Virtual App and Desktop 2305. That's the on-premises option, and then Citrix DaaS cloud updates. And we're lucky enough to have Monica with us. Monica, how's it going?
Yeah, going well. Thanks for having me. Really excited to be here. For those of you who haven't virtually met me on these podcasts, my name is Monica Griesmer, and I'm a product marketing manager for Citrix. I was actually going through my old calendar invites because I was searching for this one and found that my first time on this podcast was in August of 2020. So I've been here for a minute. I think it was in the 80, maybe 80 number of podcast episodes. So yeah, excited to be back on and talk about 2305 and all of the cloud updates. So obviously that was in May of this year. I literally just counted the number of months, 2305. And so it's been a few months here, a month and a half, but we had a ton of good features come out. I know these blogs are incredibly long, but that's kind of the point, right? To showcase everything that's happened across cloud, across on-prem, everything you need for the quarters in one spot. So that's where these blogs come from, and we put them out on a quarterly basis.
So Monica, I would like to just give you the open invite. So like take this calendar invite, and anytime you do a blog that you want to cover, reply all to this calendar invite. Say, hey, I'm going to be there on Monday or whatever, and we'll add you to the invite.
Hey, famous last words. I'll show up. You know, I just love showing up places. So I'll do that for sure.
Yeah. Well, okay. So we are now doing part 2 of this. So we didn't have you last time. Sorry. That's my fault for not being better prepared. Any
No
just
worries.
general ideas, any general mentions, conversations, topics you want to bring up around what was in the introductory piece around what you guys are doing over at Citrix to invest in the CVAD and DaaS technologies?
Absolutely. I'd say the red thread throughout the course of this year is the Citrix Universal subscription. So hybrid rights forever and allowing our customers to run in the cloud on premises for the length of their subscriptions. So that's kind of where this destination hybrid as the destination comes from. And that's why we've combined cloud and on-premises features throughout, setting the stage for that. But also, since this blog is so lengthy and we cover so much as we're going to do over this podcast, we've chunked it up into actually feature categories. So across our roadmap, our marketing efforts, we are placing features and capabilities into operational efficiency, workload flexibility, security and compliance, and employee experience. So these are the 4 that we're hanging our hats on. If you're familiar with the experience, security, choice, it's kind of the iteration of that. But the choice bucket, we have gone into operational and IT efficiency. So think admin efficiencies, making their lives easier, and then workload and device choice, offering those choices of hyperscalers, devices, workloads across the board. So I think we're chunking it up by these 4 major categories. I believe we're going into workload and device flexibility today, but that's how we're positioning across the board, both our roadmap and our marketing efforts.
Yeah. And that really aligns with the core value of what Citrix brought to the market originally and then continues to build upon.
Absolutely.
So we did cover the improving operational efficiency, operational and IT efficiency last time. Like if you had to just take that big section and boil it down to 1 or 2 things, what would you call out?
I would call out with making admins' lives easier, but also making this hybrid story easier. We're bringing a ton of cloud innovations to on-premises. I think that's a big step. I've seen just over the course of this year thus far, things like bringing Web Studio to on-prem, which allows us to bring auto-scale on-prem, those cost savings. We're bringing SPA on-prem. I think I announced that last quarter. That's probably the biggest piece of straddling and bridging any gap with what we have in the cloud and what we have on-prem. But that's not to say the cloud still doesn't have major benefits. We were talking earlier, you get those rapid updates, you get things in real time. With on-prem, you still have to make those updates yourself, but kind of straddling and making hybrid truly the destination for our customers.
I think we came up with either 80 or 90% of customers should be doing DaaS, 20 to 10% should be doing CVAD. What do you think about that estimate?
What do you mean by should be? Are now, or you think they should in the future?
Well, so the general idea from this group, Bill, Todd, Geremy, myself, in general, we have these podcasts. We believe that 80 to 90% of the customers should fit in the DaaS world. And if so, then they should go there. 10 to 20% may still need that on-premises control plane happening. What do you think about that comment?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think especially if you're talking control plane, the vast majority of customers, I'd say 80 or 90, could hugely benefit from having that control plane in the cloud. I think that 10 to 20%, that's the fully on-prem, is those highly regulated industries where they have to keep a hold of all of their data and they have to have their hands on it at all times. Not to say the cloud's not secure, it very much is, but I'd agree there. And of the 80 or 90%, I think also if those folks have already invested in cloud or in on-premises infrastructure for some of their workloads, you can keep it. We're not telling them to throw that away, but move that management plane to the cloud, burst to the cloud for other opportunities. So yeah, I totally agree there.
Good. Todd, Geremy, Bill, this improving operational and IT efficiency, any specific things that were talked about in here that you want to ask Monica about? Maybe we left it vague. Maybe you had questions afterwards. Bill, go ahead. Any of these that you specifically want her to take on?
Well, I think the first one was one that we had some, if I remember correctly, that we had some questions about, particularly as to what this was referring to, whether it was talking about auto scaling for on-premises workloads or auto scaling for workloads that are running in the cloud with an on-premises control plane, if that makes sense. I think that was a question that we had as part of this section, if I remember correctly. Keep me honest, guys.
I think so.
Yeah, I think the question was, we've added auto scale for on-premise. My first gut reaction was, why do we need that? Like the hardware on-prem is a sunk cost, but I think where we landed was, and this is to your point, Monica, is, we've added the ability to take a customer management plane, right, and connect it to cloud-based workloads. And so in that scenario, it makes a whole lot of sense for dynamic provisioning, for auto scaling, because now, even though I'm managing my DDCs now in my on-prem, when I say on-prem, I have customers who have taken all of this and just run it in a cloud. But regardless, the point is the fact that I can stand up workloads with, the term-based quote unquote on-prem licensing means I still need to be able to manage my resources, in a cloud location. Maybe it doesn't make as much sense if I own the hardware, but definitely in a cloud.
Yep. I think go ahead, Todd.
Sorry, but Geremy, on the on-prem, it actually makes a lot of sense, especially with energy costs going up. The cost of running your data center is not just the hardware investment anymore. It's the operational expense of cooling it, providing power, all those additional things that are oftentimes variables, but oftentimes they're also just the cost of doing business. And if you can leverage a technology like autoscale to help manage that, especially when you're looking at the workloads, right? So being able to adjust where the workloads are running and then doing things like powering down a rack of servers or powering down an entire host. That's where some additional cost savings may come into play. And it gives you that dynamic allocation and asset allocation that really a lot of organizations are looking to the cloud to do. Now you can have that same type of cost savings model apply on your on-prem environment as well.
Hey, Monica, what was the answer? Is this for managing on-prem resources, in the cloud resources, all from the on-prem control plane?
All of it.
It's all of it.
Okay.
So as Todd was just mentioning, we've got the last paragraph there that it allows for vertical load balancing to fill up machines before powering on new ones. So that can be on premises or in the cloud scenarios. You can have that web studio on premises and then manage the burst scenarios in the cloud. So I would say it's for both. You can manage workloads on premises and cloud, but you could only do it in the cloud before.
Yeah. Okay. And Todd's explanation of why it matters for on-premises is you'll buy that one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll buy it. Yep.
I agree. Look,
Hey,
everybody should be looking at how they manage their data center, whether it's a cloud data center or your private data center. It all adds up.
Yep.
And it's the right thing to do.
Yeah. Todd, to be clear, I do turn the lights off when I leave the room. So I don't leave them on all the time, much like my servers.
And he can find his kids all day, every day and night turning off lights.
Well, that's where we diverge. So correct.
All right, Geremy, your turn.
Jeremy's just got his house automated with his with all of his home automation stuff to automatically turn the lights off whether someone's in the room or not.
That's the nirvana, right?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I did have a question about. So being someone who has used PVS for a long time, the idea that I can do some management with PVS for MCS for PVS. But we batted this around because we were trying to figure out. So there's a piece in here. You can now create PVS catalogs from Citrix DaaS Studio Tech Preview, right? And it sounded like I could use MCS probably to create my target devices. I guess this is probably what this means, and manage my identities with those target devices, all using MCS. Is that kind of the gist of what this feature is here? Because if it is, it's pretty amazing, and it's really in just one paragraph, actually. But this sounds pretty awesome.
Yes, that's fair. I was combing through this. I will say it's a team effort as always. So I am not the PVS MCS guru. I can go back to my colleague, John DeGotti, helps mostly with these. So I am not exactly sure the backbone of this. I will ask. And especially since it's in tech preview, when it goes GA, I would love to have a deeper conversation on it. But I apologize. I can't answer that question for you right now.
You're off the hook. You were off the
Thank you.
All right, Todd, I think you were missing. Obviously, you're missing. We had that conversation earlier. What is there anything in this first section that you want to ask about?
I think a lot of the improvements or a lot of these features that have been added in that Monica highlights in this article is that a lot of them are really impactful to the admin side and the cost containment. It's not just about the user experience, right? So we need to look at what the admin experience is. And obviously, I'll throw a little monkey wrench into it, and that is, the financial experience matters as well, right? So a lot of organizations kind of jumped into the cloud, not realizing, what some of the cost management tools are available, and then they're saying, "Hey, we've got these capabilities in the cloud. Let's apply them to on-prem as well." And I think there's a lot of functionality there, and cost management is not only the cost of the resources themselves, but it's also the time and effort it takes to manage some of these environments. If we can automate it, it's going to get to the user quicker. It's not going to cost as much. And more importantly, we have much more control over what's going on. And I think that's a kind of the unsung hero of what we're doing here is realizing that most organizations have to maintain some level of compliance. So that means they need to have auditing, they need to have logging in place, but they also need to find ways to kind of save some money or make it more efficient.
100%. That is a common theme that has been around, should have been around, needs to be considered, but I think we've just all historically just kept doing it the way we were doing it, not cost effective, not automated, and then companies like Citrix is going to drive us to have it easier to do. Therefore, we should adopt more of it. Yep. Here's the one I have, Monica. This one about the VDA upgrade service. I have been challenged in the last 6 months by somebody last name Templeton to rethink whether non-persistent VDI is the only answer. And my first knee-jerk reaction was, non-persistent. We've gotten really good at that. It's ransomware proof, all that good stuff, more or less. But if I could go persistent, if I was more open-minded to the idea persistent desktops mattered, and I could upgrade the VDA service, automatically through this service, if I saw the VDI world quadruple in adoption because we did more persistent, would I be winning or losing? And if I stop and challenge myself overall, I think I'm still winning, even though I'm a big fan of non-persistent and the security and things that go along with that. But the argument from some people is this focus on non-persistent VDI has kept VDI from growing as much as possible. What do you think of that argument?
I hadn't heard that one as of late. That is quite interesting. I think with persistent VDI, it does create a great user experience as well. If, you can jump right back into your work immediately. I think that's a time to value thing. Todd was just mentioning that on the admin side, but also think about it on the user side. So sometimes if environments aren't configured correctly and users don't have a great experience, that prevents them from adopting. And with persistent VDI, if they get a far better user experience, then I think it could really, really expand. As the always consultancy SE answer is, it depends. So I think it depends on your environment, what you need your desktops for. But I think dipping into both persistent and non-persistent could be great options depending on environments. And the VDA upgrade service, to your point, is specific to persistent machines at this time, and then automates that process. So if you implement more persistent machines, and then you can automatically upgrade them, saves the admin's time, saves the user's time, the value there is quite high.
Yeah. Todd Smith, you've been around this a long time. You haven't been on some of these calls lately to have this argument with us or discussion. If I were to say, Todd, you could quadruple the adoption of VDI by embracing persistent more, what would you say?
I'd say almost 100%. I agree with you. I think a lot of people like that customized desktop that's always available, regardless of what endpoint they're using, right? Mm-hmm. So if I bounce between machines or between locations, and I want to have that desktop follow me, we've got a great solution for that. If I want to be able to install applications into my desktop, into my environment, that's great. I can do that with persistence. I can also do a lot of things where, I need that extra level of access, or I need that follow me desktop that is truly mine. Right. And think about it as developers and folks that are creative, creating content and creating a lot of, either code or a variety of different other things that they may be working on, where they want that persistence. The other thing that's behind this is, we first started looking at non-persistent desktops because it was a cost issue. Storage was expensive. Compute resources were expensive and things like that. And we also had the issue around, how do I manage antivirus? How do I manage all these things? If I can, we now have some solutions out there that when we dovetail these together, the case for persistency may be out there.
Well, and keep in mind, I'm not necessarily advocating for admin rights, but to your point, sometimes they need admin rights to do their own code development, install their own apps. That's fine. Let's still put them in a VLAN back in the data center and isolate them off. And at the same time, you could have lots of users like me that I don't need admin rights, but I don't have to deal with profile management stuff. I just want it to work like a PC, a Windows PC was intended to work. Yeah. And I've got a persistent and a non-persistent. Sometimes I just go into persistent, working that all week because it just feels good and I love it. All right, Monica, thanks for playing along with us there.
Absolutely.
Right. I got lost here. Okay, so now let's move on to topic number 2 for part 2 of this podcast series. And am I going by it?
You went too far.
You went too far. Oh, stop.
There you go.
Stop.
All right.
Stop.
So this section is called Delivering Workload and Device Flexibility. Monica, what do you mean by, don't go into the detail of the different pieces, but just in general, what's if Citrix is adopting that as one of the core pillars, what does it mean? It's the any story that I think you all are used to. Any device, anywhere, any cloud. That's the point of this category is choose your, Let me add one piece of that. Any, all treated as equally as possible. Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. Todd, I'll hit you first. Just in general, why does Citrix need that?
So it really allows the customer to have that choice, and it's the flexibility, right? So being able to say, hey, you know what, we work on any cloud provider. We work on you can connect to it from any device, any of the applications out there that are required. It all kind of flows in together. And it's a continuation of the messaging that we've had. I think at one point in my career, we came up with like 7 different any's that could go into that any message, because it was so complex. There was a lot of options there. And I think one of the challenges we had was, sometimes customers want to be prescribed a solution instead of having to face all these different questions and answers that they can come up with.
Yeah. Bill, what about your thoughts? Where does this fit into the Citrix old story, new story? How's it fit?
Well, I think it obviously it's the any like everybody else has said on here, and if you look as we go through these, we'll see this is really about focusing on expanding and improving and expanding on the availability of feature sets in the various hyperscalers. And this is when you talk about delivering workload flexibility, and then there's obviously some discussions about the device side. But I think this is ideal. There's some things in here that I see that we'll go over that we've run into on projects, one of which we've actually already implemented for a customer. So this is definitely relevant to what we do every day in my division.
And Geremy, your thoughts on this?
I mean, listen, I think it's this has always spoke to my soul, because I can obviously see different perspectives from every customer, right? They want what they want for whatever reason that they want it, right? And I think Citrix has carved out a niche of bring whatever you got, we'll make it work. So I think it's very difficult to wedge in a very narrow solution these days and be successful. I think you got to be willing to integrate with just about anything. And I think that's been the mantra of Citrix for a long time. But, we're not in a sole Windows world anymore. It's not all Active Directory or NT domain services from back in the day, if you guys remember that. I think customers bring their own solutions, and, to make it all work, you've got to be open. And so that's what's honestly kind of fun working with Citrix is we're always learning about some new thing customers are bringing into the mix. And so that's what I love about this, but I also think that's why it's so important is to constantly be open to, what our customers are using. And honestly, that is the mantra of Citrix leadership now is, what do our customers need? Let's integrate it in. Let's go figure it out. And so I'm not saying that's not what it used to be, but it's definitely doubled down, over the last 12 months.
Yeah, I think one of the things you're going to hear a lot, Andy, and the team here is that, you'll hear meet the customers where they are. Mm-hmm. Which means that the customers have the ultimate choice in what they want to do and how they want to go about doing it. We provide the mechanism on how to get where they want to go. And I think that's a critical thing that we used to, look back a couple of years ago, we used to push customers to do a certain thing. Now it's more along the lines of, hey, we're not going to make you disrupt your business. We're going to identify ways to optimize it and potentially give you some ideas or some paths to a different way of getting there, but you're still going to determine what your destination is.
So I'm going to throw one wrinkle into all of y'all's comments. We all have a common, I'm intentionally not saying enemy. We all have a common need to circumvent Microsoft, who is saying they can do it all. And we need to bring it all together and show that you need an ecosystem, equally treated ecosystem, to be able to really do this right.
You're not wrong. You know what? Listen, if you're a customer that can do the entire stack with Microsoft, I say go do it, right? But here's the other thing: is most customers I talk to, they can't do it all with just one stack, right? So there's something that throws a curveball in. Either A, it needs to be on-prem, B, it's a different identity, C, whatever, right? There's always something that keeps you from being a monolithic stack, right? And so, we bump into it every day. Listen, Bill and Andy, you probably bump into it more than we do. But, I think that's just the nature of hybrid. And I say hybrid, a lot of folks think cloud, like on-prem, cloud. Doesn't matter. It's just a variety of different areas. I mean, what customers are bringing to us and saying, make this work, is all over the map, right? And so I think that's kind of our goal here.
Yeah. I'll add one thing to what Geremy said. If you can technically do it appropriately and it's cost appropriate, then do it. But somewhere in all that, something breaks down more often than not if you truly start looking through it.
Yeah.
All right, Monica, new enhancements with Google Cloud.
Yeah, so we're starting off this section with Google, and we continue to bring not only a lot of provisioning enhancements, but the top one we have here is the Google Cloud support for Google Cloud Identity. So this was, I think Geremy mentioned in his laundry list there, like we no longer have just Azure AD, one or two identity providers. We have identity providers all over the map. So if you're a Google shop and leverage that Google Cloud Identity, we've got it built in to the Citrix Cloud Console now.
So Monica, let me ask you this. This is this is again, I thought this came out a long time ago. Has it been tech preview for a while and now it's finally GA?
I think it was in tech preview for a while. Yep.
Okay. I remember doing a POC. I shouldn't say that. I remember testing this with a customer. We'll say that. I feel like a couple of years ago. Why do you think sometimes we have features that go tech preview and then, I mean, it's 2 years on and we're finally gone GA with this?
I think it comes down to user feedback and testing a lot of the time. So sometimes when it's in that tech preview stage, some things are found, and that's the exact reason for tech previews. So we make sure it's completely solid when we roll it out for every single customer within the console. And sometimes, especially when working with alliance partners, it's just a back and forth of what needs to go where, a little bit of red tape. Not saying this particular one was that situation, but I'd say sometimes we do run into that. But we're willing to go through the red tape, and we're willing to take those steps and listen to the customers and make sure it's fully baked and ready to rock when we put it GA.
And Todd, I have to believe this is probably the number one investment you guys can make to grow that Google integration story.
Yeah. And I think that's the biggest one is, it seems that everyone and his brother is now getting a Google account to either go alongside their AD account or as a potential replacement for an AD account. But really adding a Google identity to our solution it seemed like it was a no-brainer. It did take a little while to get it out of tech preview, but it's rock solid right now. We've got customers that are saying, hey, you know what, we've moved over to a Google identity provider as our primary identity, and that seems to be working really, really well.
And just to be clear, this is so the admin can log into the workspace, users can log both?
Right now it's just for accessing workspace. I don't think this is for the admin experience just yet.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
So it's a user accessing workspace using their Google identity.
Correct.
Yeah. Correct. Yeah. First, so real quick. So I think this is awesome. I love the fact that it took a while for it to roll out, because I think what's really important is, it's not just, product management, creating a feature, testing it internally and putting it out there. Like there's a pretty rigorous testing process that goes on when something is tech preview. In fact, I've had customers tell me they appreciate being a part of that process and giving that feedback. We've got another tech preview that's been out for a while. I'm not sure if it's in this blog here, but it's we call it the vanity URL, but ultimately it is a URL that's not a cloud.com URL. So for instance, you sign up for a DaaS tenant, you call it whatever you want, right? But it's got a cloud.com URL to it. We've got a feature that lets you do a custom URL and it could map to whatever you want. But that's been tech preview for a while. But what's awesome is when we released it, a lot of customers jumped on, but they've given a lot of feedback. We've constantly had to iterate that, which is why it hasn't gone live yet, is they uncover things in their own use cases. They've given the feedback, and that's why it's still coming. It's just taking a little while. That's all.
Yep. And you actually jumped ahead a couple of weeks there. I think you got in your time machine there, Geremy, because it's at the bottom of the blog. We call it custom domain or custom URL, and it is in tech preview. Yep. And I've been working, I'll say, with the PMs on getting this live soon. I'll say it like that. So keep an eye out on the blog site for that one. Just a little teaser for you.
Awesome. I stole the thunder.
I love it.
So Monica, there's more in this about Google than just identity. What else?
Yep. So we're also, I love what Todd said about meeting customers where they are. That's really something where we're speaking to a lot this year. And where a lot of them are is the respective marketplaces of the hyperscalers. And so we're adding more and more to the Google Cloud Marketplace. I mentioned here specifically the Citrix prepared VDA images. I think we have 2 in the marketplace. So if you're starting brand new with Citrix and Google Cloud, you can actually take these prepared images and drop them straight into your environments. It's a time-saving thing. It's an easy onboarding thing. So we're adding more of those prepared images straight into the marketplace, which is very cool.
So what does that mean? I want to spin up a Citrix instance. It's going to come ready to be part of my domain, not domain, going to have VDA installed already. What does that mean?
So this one is the one we talk about specifically here is Rocky Linux multi-session with the latest VDA installed and ready to use with Citrix DaaS.
Got it.
So yep, it's ready installed.
So Rocky Linux used to be CentOS, which is a spin-off. Well, I wouldn't say a spin-off, but it's a version of Red Hat Enterprise. Essentially the same code base is what it is.
Okay.
Here's the other thing in the article here that's really important to point out as well. So we've been able to do this on the Microsoft Marketplace for a while, which was you want to buy DaaS, you can actually use the funds from your Azure commit to help pay for the Microsoft license, or at least you can use that, your DaaS license, to help buy down your commit. It's probably a better way to say it. And it sounds like, according to what you're saying here, Monica, that I can do that with Google now as well.
I believe so. So using those commit funds for Google, I believe when we did that with Azure, my boss, Carissa Stringer at the time, referred to it as Chuck E. Cheese tickets. And you can use these Chuck E. Cheese tickets equaling your Azure commit or your Google commit, and you can use them toward Citrix products. So you can use your Chuck E. Cheese tickets at more than just Chuck E. Cheese now. It's a funny example, but
that's a great example.
Yeah. Just having those commit dollars. So
well,
that's a big deal.
And here's why it's important is the more you spend with any of the hyperscalers, right, the bigger commit you have, the better rate you get on the resources you deploy, right? So again, the cloud has a Costco model too. And if you're willing to spend more in Google, so Costco and Chuck E. Cheese, but if you're willing to spend more in Google, Google or Google Cloud, Google will give you a better rate on your compute resources, right? So, but at the end of the day, you got to consume them. And so you can leverage, your DaaS licenses to help buy down that commit.
So Monica, the last section here, I believe the last one on the Google piece is MCS, Machine Creation Services for Google Cloud. How has that changed?
Across the board, we're making MCS and provisioning updates where applicable. And so this one's specifically talking about selecting a Google Cloud instance template as an input for the machine profile. So those are lightweight resources in Google Cloud and super cost effective. So just adding those machine creation services enhancements.
Yeah, cool. Anything else around Google you'd want to talk about?
I think that's all I got for Google this quarter, but
Okay.
I mean, we're always throwing more in there.
Yeah, there seems to be a real investment in that relationship for sure. And hopefully it's bi-directional and they're bringing you guys. But to me, you guys seem to be the answer for bringing Windows and Linux machines to the end user for the Google story.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next section is provisioning and performance enhancements with the guys from Amazon AWS, Amazon Web Services.
Yep. So this quarter, mostly around AWS, was those provisioning updates. So we've added enhancements with Citrix and Amazon Machine Images or AMIs, and adding filter capabilities for AMI inventories and accelerating AMI resource loading to speed up admin processes. So this is more technical, just speeding up the provisioning of AWS across the board. We're continuing to work with them on a strategic level, and we also have 2 editions of Citrix DaaS in the AWS Marketplace, but these were the updates for this quarter.
Okay. Todd, Geremy, Bill, any AWS related projects and things that you've seen lately that you'd want to talk about?
Nothing specific, but I am super excited about this because provisioning with MCS has gotten, let's just say, a lot better over the last 6 months. Yeah. Just faster is, I guess, probably the best way to put it.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Geremy.
All right, cost saving and flexibility on Azure. That's Microsoft Azure thing.
Yep. So moving on to our Azure section, this first topic is about adding the capability for deployments to switch to a lower tier storage type at shutdown for cost savings. So, and making it simple for machine profile catalogs to ease feature adoption and expand available properties. So just overall, that cost savings with Azure across the board.
So, Geremy, Todd, you guys running into customers that they love the idea of running their desktop workloads on Azure. They just struggle with the overall cost of it.
Yeah, they love it, and then they get the bill, and then they realize that they have to find some ways to reduce the cost. And this actually helps do that, right? Pay for high tier storage when the device is active or when the machine is active, and then when it goes into a dormant state, or you want to use a lesser performing or lower cost, you can drop it down to a lower tier storage.
Yeah.
Now,
Now,
go
ahead.
I was just going to say, I think this plays well into the argument or the statement you made around, or the question you had around persistent versus non-persistent.
Yeah.
When you go persistent in a cloud or hyperscaler, that machine shuts down. That's still consuming that storage, right? And you're
Correct.
paying. It's not as expensive, obviously, as when the machine is running. But the ability to take that storage and flip it from a premium to a standard tier can, when you do that at scale, it can have a big impact on the cost to the customer for all of those workloads. So I think this is really a really neat feature and something that I'm glad to see.
So
here's what's interesting is, listen, I know Citrix is not the first to do this, but this is clever, right? So I don't think that we're used to thinking in terms of this thing is turned off. How can I flip some knobs and switches when this thing is not running to help save some money? This is not anything we ever considered like on-prem. Maybe with tiered storage on-prem, you could take something that hasn't been touched for a while and move it to a different tier of storage. But the fact that you can do this on the fly, I mean, it's pretty slick, right? And I think this is kind of what the flexibility of the cloud does is, number one, we've got technologies that let you use a lower tier anyway. So you don't need premium SSD because you can cache. And now we're saying you turn the guy off and you don't need SSD at all. You can use that lower tier hard drive. I mean, that's pretty slick. It might not make a difference on 5 machines, but you scale that out to 1,000, that's a big chunk of change.
So I love these discussions about optimizing efficiencies, but at the same time, when I'm running in Azure, is it not common to want to be running in a multi-session scenario where these things can't apply?
I mean, they'll always apply. Even with the multi-session you're using auto scale to maybe scale vertically now, and you still got a pool of machines that will turn off and you're optimizing. I just think there's several opportunities. And granted, this is where I think a lot of folks aren't thinking from a customer perspective because they never had to. But listen, you've got a lot of options, whether it's, turning things off or just optimizing the things that are running, to consider when you do this. And what's interesting even more is every platform, Azure, AWS, GCP, is going to be a little bit different. I think that's the onus on Citrix, is to figure out the nuance and make it play nicely.
Yeah, I guess I didn't really think about that. So you got multi-session, you still have scenarios where you may have to tone it down, where there's nobody using the box and you want to, decrease your spend in that moment in time.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right, Monica, next one is Citrix support for Nutanix cloud clusters on Azure.
Yep. So at the Nutanix Next event, which I got to see all of you, I think, except for Todd in person there, get to say hello. We announced that we had NC2 Nutanix Cloud Cluster support on Azure for Citrix DaaS and CVAD. So this has been long awaited for those joint Citrix and Azure customers to allow for the new plugin for NC2 actually ensures seamless migration of Citrix workloads from on-prem infrastructure to the cloud. So it really streamlines those operations across multiple clouds without that added complexity. So I believe we've had this for support on AWS previously, and now we're bringing it to Azure. So this was a big announcement a few months ago when we were at the Next event.
And is it really as simple as I've got Nutanix through Prism on premises? I've got it in XenTegra's data center, aka cloud. I've got it now in NC2 and Azure, potentially AWS at the same time. I mean, it really is the same interface across all those different footprints.
Yes, I believe so.
That's correct.
It is. This is pretty slick, actually. So,
yeah.
I'm not going to go off on this one, but I did do a session on this at Next. I'm working with our internal team on this. There's a Nutanix validated design that's out for NC2. I think it's being updated because PVS, I think, is coming later this year as well. But, again, NC2 is, you're running basically, why is it escaping me? The OS, the new Nutanix OS. What's it called? Acropolis, yeah. I mean, you're running Acropolis on Azure natively, and you've got one look at a data center that spans both on-prem and the cloud. DaaS can tie into it just using the same plugin we've been using for a while. It's been updated, of course, for NC2, but it works great.
And you talk about true commonality, universal across the different platforms. That's like the prototype for all that. All right, next section, expanding choice with Linux VDA. Monica.
I really enjoy speaking to the Linux VDA with every quarter because quarter after quarter, we're continuing to add features to be right in parity with the Windows VDA. And the Linux VDA, if you're not using it today, is great for developers. It's great for testing environments. It's great for getting around Microsoft licensing, if that's your choice. And we brought stuff this past quarter for things like support for FIDO2, H.264 lossless compression for HDX 3D Pro, and adding Citrix session recording and tech preview. So those features that may have been a barrier to entry for you to adopt the Linux VDA before, we're bringing them to you. And so that I always love speaking to that in these blogs. And then we've actually added a video of an overview of the Linux VDA. Maybe if you're trying to get internal buy-in or test it out, it'd be good to take a look at too.
Hey, Bill, do you have an example of a customer we've implemented the Linux VDA for?
No, I've had a few. We've had a couple that wanted us to help them, and we did build out a VDA on a Linux distro just for testing. But we've never really had anybody do it at scale thus far.
I think we're just talking to some of the wrong clients. It's out there. Jeremy, Todd, any?
Oh yeah, it's out there, definitely. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oil and gas and such are using it.
Yeah. A lot of research institutions, research labs are using Linux because primarily the applications that they're running are Linux-based apps. We're also seeing it start into a lot of the STEM programs in K-12 education. They're starting using Linux for a couple of reasons. One is it's easy to code. Number two is the price to entry is fairly low.
Yeah. It makes sense. I mean, if you don't need Windows, you can remove that security attack vector. You can get the job done. Maybe it's an appliance type scenario or a very isolated type scenario. Maybe it's for a user that, maybe use a browser all day for their workloads and they need one or two, technology specific Linux apps.
And I think a lot of the robotics and the automation systems are Linux first.
Yeah. Well, and I have a personal thing where I believe they took the name of AVD, Azure Virtual Desktop, was Azure Virtual Desktop. It became WVD, Windows Virtual Desktop. I think Microsoft had a need to re-borrow that for the Windows 365 world. Plus, AVD is more open to a Linux first world, which, 10 years from now, maybe we look up and a lot of these desktops running in Azure are Linux desktops. And that name aligns. All right, Monica, last section here on this part of it, and it is Citrix endpoint management. Give us just a quick spin or quick conversation around Citrix and what they're doing around endpoint management, and then specifically what we're doing here.
Yeah, so Citrix Endpoint Management is still a part of the Citrix family of products, and we're continuing to add support. So here we are supporting iOS MAM SDK frameworks of Xamarin and Cordova. So just continuing to add that support for those frameworks so that customers using endpoint management today can have the most updated versions. I'd say we're slowly but surely giving a little bit more love to endpoint management. I know we've focused primarily on DaaS and VDI, secure private access, and analytics, but we are still moving the ball along for endpoint management across the board. And I don't know if Todd or Jeremy, you want to speak to that too, but did want to show kind of we're still doing more here.
Yeah, I think endpoint management was kind of one of those hot potato products that was bounced back and forth. And then I think there was some fairly good size or fairly large customers that were starting to adopt endpoint management. And our approach towards endpoint management, which is as much on the device, but even more on the application itself. Right. So the ability to sandbox that application is something that we've done for years. And then it was a core component of our strategy. But the problem is that we talked about endpoint management from a device side. And it created some confusion out there with customers.
Right. Well, and yeah, that's where Citrix had like some really special sauce was on the mobile application management side. Geremy, are these endpoint management conversations coming up with customers?
They are actually. So I've actually had customers reach out, net new customers looking for a good partner to do some Citrix endpoint management with. So we have folks reaching out for sure. And these are folks who have not used it in the past. So, I've had to dive back in and dust off my chops for sure.
Well, I know a partner that can help.
I know we do. I think we both do.
Yeah. Bill, any thoughts on Citrix endpoint management as part of the solution stack?
Yeah, I mean, we've done some endpoint management over the years. When Citrix first acquired it, I learned it pretty extensively and did several implementations, but haven't seen a lot of it lately. And to Todd's point, it kind of ping-ponged around there for a while. I wasn't sure whether it was going to stay around or not, but it's nice to see, it getting some love, so to speak. And I noticed that the reference here to the MAM SDK, the legacy one actually, I think, goes end of life the end of this month. So this is important to see that Citrix is extending that to other SDKs that can be leveraged by customers to build apps and wrap them and get them into management on iOS devices.
Yeah. I mean, the use cases have not gone away. They just continue to come out of the woodwork.
They do. Yes.
All right. Well, we're done with that section. Monica, you going to be able to join us next Monday? 2 Mondays from now.
2 Mondays from now. Yes. Happy to.
All right. Well, we appreciate you jumping on and going through this with us. And guys, as always, thanks for the opportunity to have these discussions. There's a gazillion more things we could be talking about, but hitting what we cover, what Citrix covers in these blogs, it's got to be helpful for those that listen. And, you never know when you run into somebody who has a specific question, you can refer them back to this and add that value.
Absolutely.
Guys, thank you. And we'll do it again in 2 weeks.
All right. See you guys in 2 weeks.
Thanks all.